cis friends, please listen to this. Imagine going through puberty partially and repeatedly. And then also, on top of that, add the feeling of knowing that you can't wait until you get through puberty. And maybe puberty will come again soon. Hello to all, happy Sunday, welcome to Dwhell On It, thanks for checking this out again. New viewers, thank you for finding your way here. Please hit that subscribe button to see what's up with future episodes. Existing viewers, people who have seen me around out and about, people who have seen me on social media platforms, people who follow these links from email blasts, personal friends, everything. Hit that subscribe button too if you haven't yet. If you like the content, please hit the like button. And everybody who's watching this on Instagram, do all of the equivalent stuff but for Instagram. There's a lot of anti-trans rhetoric continuing to happen, and it's really important to help amplify these types of messages to combat that negative attention. With all of the negative attention and all of the anti-trans bills, all of the anti-trans behavior, all of the anti-trans media, all of those things, every single opportunity to push back isn't just important, it is critical. So please do all of us a solid, subscribe, like, and also don't hesitate to share. Help encourage the message to be heard, and then also help encourage the systems hosting these messages that they want to be seen. As well, while we're at it, if it's on YouTube, check the comments, and if it's on Instagram, do it by DM. But if you have any questions that you would like to see answered of your own in a future episode, please do those accordingly so that I can make sure to add those to the grab bag. And then also as a comment to Instagram viewers, if you have not followed me yet on YouTube, please don't hesitate to check me out, Taylor LaChrist. The reason for that was a couple episodes ago, I needed to break an episode up because Instagram does have some upload limitations compared to YouTube. And in case I do get into any longer episodes that are certainly topic based, I'd like to make sure that you get that best possible experience. So please definitely check me out on YouTube if you haven't done that yet. On the topic actually of video uploads and whatnot, I'm also going to be introducing a couple new formats, features. I don't know, haven't decided what to call them yet, but I've been scribbling some ideas down that I think are going to be some very exciting introductions. That's another reason to go ahead and subscribe. Please do. I really hope to see this content get very exciting and engaging. I'd like to see these messages make sure to get out and about more, because as I mentioned, all of that negative anti-trans conversation, communication, promotion, it has to get mitigated, and it can only be mitigated if it gets seen and heard. Today's content is actually going to be a little bit of a twist. As I mentioned that I'm always getting into the grab bag. However, there was one question that I got that really resonated with me with some words, so I am going to be yanking that and putting that as the top. So I might end up following with grab bag, or I might just be on this. So this is a question that I got on Reddit, and I'm going to do the best that I can to unpack it. The reason why I want to address this now is there's some language in here that actually relates very well with current events, which I think is really difficult to just table and push aside. I truly wish with all of these questions I can answer them all in one moment, but I really also want to ensure that the answers that you get are honest and not rushed through. Let's try to unpack this one. I want all of my cis viewers to really open up your ears, because this is an excellent, insightful question. So I hope that this question, and of course the answer that I'm going to give, is empowering. I'm 32, I was raised by narcissists, and didn't have the self-agency to know I was trans until I was 30. I don't feel supported in the trans community, and I don't have the resources to get transition care non-intermittently, so I've had to suffer a lot on my own, with no family or friends. I lost all of that in 2020. Literally everything but 2 sisters and what I physically could fit into my car. Since then, I found amazing personal salvation by enrolling in AASECT's Sexuality and Gender Consultation and Coaching Program through Sexual Health Alliance Southwest, and I am due to be certified next month. I have a degree in professional music from Berkeley, and I've laid some of the groundwork for an agency geared towards promoting wellness and brand management for marginalized artists who want to steer the public narrative towards the self-love you describe so beautifully. But I have no guidance or support aside from my certifications in PR, music, human resources, mindfulness, business startup, online course creation, mixology, menu creation, and basic ASL. These certifications are what I've been doing in my free time out of pocket because I'm bored, and part of me hopes they'll pay off eventually. But I feel like an imposter who hasn't earned the right to build the platform I want to build since I don't come from any American privilege whatsoever. So my question is, how do I keep going even though it's breaking my heart and incredibly lonely? So this was a fantastic question. Not to say that I haven't received fantastic questions otherwise. I repeat that, as a matter of fact, quite frequently about how great questions are. This one caught my attention because of two things. One, an amazing resume, and two, the comment about American privilege. Living in Canada, living in Winnipeg, and currently going through the, call it whatever you want, protest, rally, display of ignorance, tiny PP parade, honking, or whatever. I don't want to give it more attention than it's worth. All I know is that it's a display of ignorance is the easiest way to put it. A lot of that is rooted in privilege in principle. So we could take out American privilege and we can really encapsulate it with whether it's white privilege, male privilege. It's more than just a certain nation. It is just a certain mindset. It's more than the country. It is the being, the person, for them to just grasp this idea that what they want is more important than anything else, including you. I really wanted to take today's current events and wrap that together with this question. For starters, raised by narcissists. When it comes to being raised by narcissists, remember that a narcissistic parent is proud of themselves and their achievements, and often a narcissistic parent will consider their family as an achievement. So also knowing that, because a narcissistic parent does not like to be embarrassed, that they're going to prevent their ecosystem from allowing anything that they would consider embarrassing. And so if you've got a narcissistic parent who's proud of their family and are proud of the values that they uphold, and then their child is representing values that they don't believe in, they feel like they did something wrong. They feel shame. They feel shame on behalf of, what happened? Where did I go wrong? So I can certainly empathize with how that could affect an upbringing. So when it comes to this individual discovering themselves at the age of 30, they perhaps have been limited from learning about themselves because of their family preventing that type of education. Just for example, I'm just spitballing an idea out there. That said, though, I really want to address the self-agency remark. That is a lot of accountability to put on yourself. That if you're putting your education, your understanding as your responsibility, which it is, but remember, you don't know what you don't know. And so if you don't know that you're trans, how are you supposed to hold yourself accountable for not knowing that you're trans? If there's nothing that is resonating with you that says, hey, I should explore this further because it feels really important to me, how is that supposed to be your responsibility? It'd be a totally different story if you went and you got a biopsy and then the doctor's like, yeah, you're trans. And then you're like, oh, okay, I'm trans. I'll start doing the trans things now. Like, that's not how it works. So only until you start to resonate with enough passion to explore it further is that the time to start being accountable for any decisions that you make. And how are you supposed to explore understanding it better without an inspiration to read it, to look into it, to discover it, to ask questions about it? If you don't know that it is a relevant part of your life, or if there's nothing resonating with you suggesting that, hey, I should kind of keep my eye on this, how is that your accountability? It's not like we grow up and go through school or whatever, and then partway through whatever class it is that's going to be relevant, they'd be like, now remember, take a look at your gender identity. Let's do a little study on that. That doesn't happen. Putting that accountability on yourself for not knowing is a really, really unnecessary punch at yourself. So please, self-reflection, forgive yourself for that. Forgive yourself for not knowing earlier, because nobody said that you need to know by this time. You didn't fail a deadline. You didn't miss a mark. You may have discovered your inner self, right? Your authentic self, perhaps a little later than you may consider that you would have desired. You may have considered it to be later behind everyone else. Please take and throw that out the window. You discovered yourself when you understood yourself. You discovered yourself when you understood that it was passionate to be understood. End of story. When it comes to not feeling supported by the trans community, the first thing I want to say is I'm sorry that you feel like you are not receiving support from the trans community, because right now, if there's one thing that we need more than ever, is the feeling of support, being welcome, being included, being understood, and so on and so on and so on. So to not feel like you're being supported, especially at this time right now, is incredibly difficult, and I'm very sorry that is something you're experiencing. I'm definitely not interested in throwing the thoughts and prayers at it, but I can tell you that support in trans communities exists. So to feel as if you're not receiving that support is a very, very, very difficult thing to experience, and I acknowledge that. At the same time, I also want to delicately dodge this because it's a slightly ambiguous statement, because the most important question about it is why. What I mean by that is that it's the same thing where it's like, so-and-so said something mean to me, and well, what happened? Right? Like, that's, saying something mean is not good. Was it a response to something, or was it a toxic individual just always saying something mean? Keep asking yourself why every time you answer. I don't feel supported because I'm not getting the answer that I want. Why? Are you not asking it the right way, or are you asking people who aren't qualified to give you the answer that you need? Is the community not inherently supportive in general? That's frustrating. Is the accessibility something that is not available? That's frustrating. Is the support there, but it's not resonating in a way that is important to you? That's frustrating. And then I can even put the accountability on yourself. Are you participating with the community? Because remember that it's not like there's a union or like an index of all the trans individuals in the area and be like, oh, we have an event, I'm gonna get a hold of Taylor, and then automatically feel included, right? That it does take that responsibility as well to get into the communities to also feel supported by them. And then you can also take a look at jurisdictions. If it's physically in your area, perhaps there might need to be a little bit of extra work to find a community that is supportive, because remember, at the end of the day, the trans community is diverse, and we're also all humans. We all have our own personal values. Just because we're trans doesn't automatically make us buddies. It's blunt, but am I wrong? I have my personal networks. I have people I choose to be with, and I have people who I choose to not associate with. And that goes for anybody, and it doesn't matter if they're cis or trans. Finding communities that work with you also require work to find the communities. Support in trans communities exists. And the question as well for yourself is, are you looking for support in your local trans community or support in your trans community as a whole? If you find comfort in, for example, being part of Discord servers, video game networks, staying involved and engaged in Reddit conversations, and so on. There's lots of Zoom calls and conference calls from, different types of communities all around the country and even the world, right, where you can just participate in events and then you perhaps network from there too. Do those count as support too, or are you looking for a physical type of affiliation? And if it's the latter, then it's going back to what I was just saying about the why don't you feel supported. It's really difficult for me to just look at that and objectively provide a response to that because of the ambiguity, but I do hear you, and I hope that taking the steps necessary to land in the community that serves you best comes soon, right? Because it is something that you deserve. Again, now I'm going to speak this more to cis individuals who are watching this for context. When it comes to the resources for continual trans healthcare, I can only empathize, and cis friends, please listen to this. Imagine going through puberty partially and repeatedly, and then also on top of that, add the feeling of knowing that you can't wait until you get through puberty, and maybe puberty will come again soon. Put that into your mind now. Think about what that feels like. Think about that emotion, and think about that distress, about wondering if you're ever going to actually reach your authenticity, if you'll reach your happiness. Receiving a script, for example, for HRT is not take this until the bottle is empty type of thing. It is part of the rest of our lives, using hormone replacement therapy as an example of trans healthcare, because not every trans individual wants or needs HRT. That, every trans individual is valid, however their path of transitioning is wanted to be and looks like. If you choose to go on HRT and you don't have consistent care, create this for perspective. Hormone replacement therapy, for all intents and purposes, is like a second puberty. And your body goes through changes. Your emotions fluctuate as you go through that as well. And that aside, as a trans individual, when you find yourself essentially finally on a path towards authenticity, which is then a path towards happiness. Now think about that getting stopped and taken away from you for whatever reasons. And then you may or may not be able to get back on. And then it's taken away from you again because reasons. Your body starts to essentially detransition. Now think about what that's doing to yourself. You get to be teased with your sense of self. You're teased with happiness. You're teased with comfort. And then you're also stressed with wondering, am I finally where I want to be? Imagine not just what that does to the body, but what that does to the mind, and then what that does to the individual. And that is why it is so important for it to get recognized with a higher priority when it comes to healthcare. This is not just gender-affirming care. This is life-affirming care. It is really frustrating as well that the services provided for trans healthcare are also so inaccessible to the people who need it, whether it's by pricing or by policies. Like, when you really put it in perspective, this isn't like, having an antihistamine until whatever goes away. It's not like that. This is about quality of living. And if your quality of living continues to be interrupted for whatever reasons, when there are systems and solutions available to get that done, I want to draw that forward for perspective as to why this is such an important point. The pricing is it's almost hypocritical to the individuals who need the support. If you look at a common demographic of trans individuals and then look at the expenses for trans individuals so that they can live authentically, the system is not designed to be helpful. So when you think about, intermittent care, difficulty with the pandemic, social challenges because of being trans, this is a very difficult situation. So to all of my cis viewers, please put that into your mind. Please help advocate so that trans healthcare is sustainable for all trans individuals and accessible for all trans individuals. This isn't just a take this until you feel better thing. This is a take this so that you can be authentic with yourself type of thing. Every time that the conversation comes up about how important trans healthcare is to be affordable and consistent, this is a great example of the distress that happens from not having consistent care. Think about all of the times that your doctor has prescribed something to you and says, take all of these pills. Don't stop when you're feeling better. Take all of these pills. Trans healthcare, especially in the interest of hormone replacement therapy, is take all these pills. That bottle doesn't end. And so having that taken away repeatedly, that's a broken system. Those things must get addressed to just help create a better and safer environment for all trans individuals. When it comes to losing it all, again, cis friends, please perk your ears up. I completely understand how 2020 has been difficult. It has been surreal. It has been overwhelming, exhausting, painful, heartbreaking. I can go on and on and on. And I don't want to relive those traumas because nobody needs to be reminded about how difficult that time was. So what I will say is I understand. I see what you're saying. It is absolutely not minimized. It is an experience that is repeated far too frequently, and especially over the last couple of years. As I mentioned, surreal is probably the most underused and understated word for how our world has been. But for everybody listening, especially cis individuals, I want to point out two things. Trans individuals often lose it all the day that they recognize themselves. A trans individual, when they come out, they don't come out because they chose to be trans. They came out because they chose to allow the world around them to understand them and their authenticity at the risk of losing it all, at the risk of perhaps losing your job, at the risk of perhaps losing your friends, at the risk of losing your family, at the risk of losing your assets, and at the risk of losing your life. The last couple of years have been exceptionally surreal for trans individuals all across the world, and using a line such as, I lost all of that, is a far too frequent line used by trans individuals because it is a far too common thing to happen. Cis friends, please understand that a trans individual, when they're coming out to you, they're putting it all on the line, and do everything that you can to help them not lose it all. Any trans individual at any point in history, let alone the past 2 years, have always dealt with challenges because of who they are, which is not right. 2020 has taken everything and just made a maelstrom out of it. Being a victim of the damages that have happened because of the pandemic and the reactions from it. I wish I can do the thoughts and prayers thing and make it all better, but I can't. But again, this is me saying, I hear you. I acknowledge you. I trust that you have strength and perseverance. For somebody who's lost it all, to still be standing and asking questions, I'd say you still have a lot. Consider your values. Ask yourself, what are your values? Your values yourself, or is your values your things around you? And it sounds to me like your values yourself, and you still have that, and that's great. For everyone who's unfamiliar, AASECT is American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists, which is a fantastic organization, and I am very happy to hear that this user is close to being certified with them, because they have a very strong stance on supporting trans individuals and non-binary individuals. So it's great to know there's another person being certified to the mix to help to amplify that messaging too. That resume is wild, oh my gosh, and one thing that I can only say from that much diversity and creativity is the intersectionality out of all of those two is nothing but an asset. So first, major props for creating the time and exploring your passions and using your passions that also not only resonate with yourself, but likely reflect yourself too in a variety of mediums. So I also hope that by doing all of these projects and just different angles of life and entering all these different sectors, that as you mentioned, that you did it because you're bored, and then you also did it with the hopes that they will benefit you in the future. I can't imagine that they won't. And as I mentioned about the intersectionality, there is a really nice overlap of, the trans community, the queer community, with so many of those courses and certifications that I can't imagine how that won't benefit you as you continue to explore and chase your passions. So major props to you for creating all of that time to do it. And I appreciate when you're saying that it's out of pocket. If it amounts to anything, education costs money. You get what you pay for. I can go on and on with those cheap quips, but it is true though. So I truly do hope that the investments that you put in will pay off, because those are a lot, and that is great that you created that time to do that. So now to get to the meat and potatoes of things. First, I saw you comment positively about my feedback, so thank you. I don't want to center myself on this, so I want to say that I saw it, but I don't want to dwell on it. But when it comes to saying you feel like an imposter who hasn't earned the right to build the platform you want to build since you don't come from any American privilege whatsoever, that is a very understandable and systemic belief because of the world around us. I wish I can say something as simple as shake it. I'm the type of person who can do that. I don't expect many others to be able to do it. American privilege in general, white nationalism, patriarchy, call it whatever you want, is designed to suppress the success of everybody who is not like them. So are you truly an imposter, or are you essentially a victim of a broken system? So when it comes to feeling like an imposter, again, this goes back to the self-reflection. What is it that's making you feeling like an imposter? Because for all intents and purposes, are you on the same level with everybody else? So feeling like an imposter, though, because of American privilege, I want to address this simply and succinctly. An imposter is designed to go into an area and come out with net gain. An imposter goes into a situation unnoticed or without causing an interruption and get something out of it. Intel, material, whatever, right? When you really think about it, what's an imposter doing in an area? An imposter is going into an area that they don't belong so that they can take something back to where they came from. That's pretty much how it works. But it sounds to me like you're an individual who's being oppressed by the system, and you're not an imposter. You're just trying to claim your right, your ground. You just want your footprint. That's all it is. You want your footprint that you have a right to. That's not being an imposter. That's asking for personal space. You just, hey, just like, I just want my space here. Can I have it? I can have it, right? So if you're already put on your back foot because of the world around you, is that really an imposter? Or, as I mentioned, being a victim of oppression, being a victim of discrimination, being a victim of all the things that keep you from being the best person that you have the right to be? That's my take on that. That said, not to minimize the point though, I'm not going to play the couch therapist. I'm not taking that role. But seeing that word sticks out because it is not something to be taken lightly. I'm not saying that it's a critical thing, but it affects your quality of living. Imposter syndrome is a thing. When you have the resources available, please don't hesitate, if you haven't yet, speak to a professional, if you can, about imposter syndrome, because it does affect your quality of living. It affects your happiness. It affects your value of worth. Exploring that further and understanding better about how you're not an imposter when you're already by default removed. You're trying to fit in. You're trying to just earn your space. You're not trying to get beyond what you have a right to, I'm assuming. You're not trying to take more, because that's what an imposter is doing. Remember, an imposter is trying to take more. An imposter is trying to disguise themselves to fit in with everyone else so they can get more. They can steal, they can learn, they can cheat, they can whatever. That's what an imposter does, because they're not doing that action unless there is a net gain for them. But if all you're trying to do is just succeed in life, you're just trying to have your little footprint of you space, getting rewarded for your hard work. If you're trying to just live, that's not an imposter. If you do feel like you're constantly invading a territory, that is something to certainly look into, because it is a huge drain on mental wellness if you don't feel like you have a belonging. And you do. You're valid. You have a right to be here. You have a right to succeed. You have a right to represent your value. You have a right to gain assets. You have a right to represent your worth. You have a right for all of those things. And just creating a little space from the system that's trying to push you down is not being an imposter. You're just putting like, hey, I earned this. You earned that. I earned this. That's not a bad thing. So when it comes to how do you keep going, you're already going. I alluded to this in that comment. You're already going. You asked the question. You chose to ask the question because you're passionate about continuing to go. You haven't stopped, right? Because if you stopped, you wouldn't have asked the question. If you stopped, you wouldn't even bothered to type a response. So you're already going. It might not be going as illustrious as you have in your head. That could be one of the biggest points. If you're expecting a result and that result doesn't get met, that leads to disappointment. And that's not a trans thing. That's not an American thing. That's not a Canadian thing. That's a people thing. That if you set an expectation and you don't get what you expect, disappointment is typically the emotion that happens. So you're asking me how to do something you're already doing. So I guess I could simply say, keep doing it. You're on this journey. It's up to you to decide if you want to continue expecting something or being in the moment and making the best of every moment that you have control of. If it amounts to anything when it comes to the loneliness and the heartbreak, this is going to sound so easy. I acknowledge that it's not. The expectations you have for later, do everything that you can to shake them. As I mentioned, you are currently going. You asked the question. You did the thing. You're doing the thing. You continue to pursue interests that resonate with you because you're passionate about how you represent yourself in the world. When it comes to how to keep going, though, let's reframe this. It's not about how to keep going. It's how to prevent heartbreak and loss. Recognize that this exact second, this nanosecond, this moment is the only moment in time you have 100% control of the situation. Every nanosecond onward is subject to an infinite amount of variables that are outside of your control. So if you create this impression that this is the life path I want, and you're firm on that, prepare yourself for disappointment. Prepare yourself for heartbreak. Prepare yourself for loneliness. You might do everything within your power to not have that happen, and then something coming out of left field just smashes it away. And it can, and it will. Sometimes you'll end up doing something that may or may not be regrettable. Sometimes you may go down a path that might be surprising. We don't know those things until they happen. So if you continue to go and expect a result, expect disappointment. Just do you, and then everything else that is meant to happen by you creating a path that is directly representative of your happiness at the time that you take every step. That's how you keep going. So that's the whole the power of now thing, the living in the moment thing, recognizing the only thing you have 100% control over is this exact second. This second, not that second in a little bit when you get to it. This second. Every choice you make is a representation of all of the things that are important to you at that exact moment in time. Stay in that moment. Stay in that moment. Don't assess the moment. Don't look back and wonder if you did the right thing or the wrong thing, because the reality is that's the only thing. We can never go back in time and do everything again but a different path. It is not possible. We cannot go back into that exact moment of space and time and do it again. Every decision you make at this exact second represents all of the values that are most important to you and bring you comfort and happiness. Stay in that moment. Know you're going forward. So as long as you stay on that path that represents the values that are important to you and what bring you comfort and happiness, then the path that you end up creating, it might have things that would represent heartbreak or loneliness. But every decision you made at the time was the best decision you felt was right. That's how you keep going. By recognizing you are fully in control. And then whatever you manifest represents your values. Even though you experience heartbreak, even though you experience loneliness, I can empathize entirely with that. I'm not going to say that's something that's going to go away. I'm not going to pretend that's something that's not going to exist or go away or whatever. But so long as every decision you make represents your values this exact moment, and you understand that everything that happens in the future has more variables than your own, I hope that helps inspire the constantly going. How do you keep going? By knowing you're doing the best you can with what you have to work with at that time. That's it. Don't expect anything beyond your best effort. It is a difficult world. I wish I can sugarcoat it. I wish I can thoughts and prayers things. It is difficult, and it's not a choice that you chose to make. You didn't choose to walk into a difficult world. You chose to accept yourself, which is the most important part. The world is what it is. I'm not going to say it's getting better, it's getting worse. Spoiler, worse. Whatever happens in the world around us, however our networks choose to take care of us, however our peers choose to interact with us, those things are controlled by so many more variables than yourself. So no matter what you do, if you continue to think that if you do this, it's going to make other factors easier, you're still putting yourself at risk of disappointment because there could be more factors that take that back. I know I got deep in that one, and I hope I answered it well enough. If it's a deeper question, please reach out to professionals who can assist with things like mental wellness to keep you in the right place. It sounds to me like it's a motivation thing, not a mental health thing. But if this is a mental health based question, as much as I am a mental health advocate, I am not in a position to do counseling or such. So please make sure to reach out to somebody qualified so that you are able to feel supported in that way and feel inspired in that way too. I really appreciate that question, and thank you so much for being vulnerable and honest with your situation. I'm very envious about your resume, and I truly do hope you find great success with that. I'm going to wrap up. This was a very unique episode. I hope everybody was able to enjoy this as well, because there was a lot to unpack, and I hope that there was a lot to learn from this episode too. While we're here, while I'm wrapping up, please hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet. Please like this video too, so that we can help those algorithms, as I was talking about as well, nerd mode on. And then also please leave comments in the description if you have any questions that you would like to have answered in the future, or if you would like to respond to points about this episode too. I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts and your feedback, so make sure to get that done. Everybody on Instagram, do that by DM please. And then while we're here as well, in the description as always, there is a link to a campaign that is sending a message to elected officials in your area, whether it's the civic, the provincial, or the federal individuals, and it is a request and a call to action so that they can ensure that businesses, organizations, and companies in the communities that you live in are able to optimize and represent their corporate social responsibilities, whether it's social or ethical or whatnot, so that it prevents abuse towards the 2S LGBTQI plus communities. That calling for action that change must happen is important, and it can't be done without your help. So please click the link. It takes less than a minute. Name, email address, postal code, hit send, share it with your friends, and get your voice heard, and do it regularly and repeatedly. You can do it up to 3 times a day, so that those elected officials know that you take it seriously and that you're going to have a better community around you, because it is very important for you. Thank you again for taking part in watching this video. Please like, share, subscribe again, and I want everyone to stay excited for some changes that are going to come in the channel soon. I'm really excited about putting some of these together, and I hope I can get them done sooner rather than later. Otherwise, for now, thank you again for watching this episode. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I can't wait to see what we have for you next week. So have a great night, have a great rest of your week as always, and I will talk to you then.